So welcome to everyone just joining. We were chatting a little bit before as people are signing on. How many of you, when you came into work day, were like raring to go, super excited, pumped to get to work versus like, oh, maybe not so much?
Most of us, I should say myself, start the day often not pumped. And I think as work becomes more complicated, that impacts how you execute. It impacts the quality of your work. It impacts your happiness, everything. And so I think when I was growing up, it was all about shoving down your emotions and just getting to work. But part of what we'll share today is it doesn't work so much anymore.
Yes, very true. Well, maybe we should hop into it today. So nice to meet all of you. If I haven't met you before, my name's Laura. Tom and I work closely. We are partners at NextJump out of our New York City office, and we focus on both product and curriculum. And today we will be talking about mental preparedness and then a little bit about how AI can help. So defining, what do we mean by mental preparedness? And so would define this as like a skill set, mindset, call it whatever you'd like, to be ready to situationally adjust. Feeling mentally light, mentally prepared to just meet what the world is going to throw at you at any given day. And the idea is in order to do that, you need to be light, playful, flexible, open-minded. I have this illustration here of a tree kind of bending in the breeze. Is if the momentum in a situation or what you're trying to do is blowing you in a certain direction, it might not be the direction that you thought it would be. Are you going to be able to adjust with what is happening around you? Or if you stay super rigid in this metaphor of a tree, you can actually snap under the pressure. And so this personally resonates with me and my mom. As a kid, I was always really like that perfect planning person that just wanted to know what the plan was. We're going to do this and we're going to execute, and it's just going to go exactly how we think it is in our brains. Just throw all of that outside the window. So unless you can be a tree in the breeze and reading and adjusting and moving with what the situation is throwing at you, it's going to be very challenging.
Yeah, I think about it that we're all on essentially autopilot. At least I feel I have a strong autopilot where situations are becoming more challenging on a daily basis, basically, sometimes even hourly. And if we aren't conscious of how we tend to respond to stress and tend to respond to challenging situations, we just keep doing the same things over and over again without being conscious about the adjustments that we need to make. And that's really what we're going to get into today.
So why does this matter? I was talking a little bit about perfect planning. Perfect planning does not exist. Maybe there was a time where there was like companies were doing strategic plans. You had a 5-year plan. Maybe you had a 5-year plan for your career or what you thought you were doing. But brought to mind this quote by Mike Tyson, which is, everyone has a great plan until they get punched in the face. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't know how many of you are feeling punched in the face a little bit more often than usual. The amount of times you're saying, I didn't see that coming, is increasing. So the idea is it's impossible to look around every single corner. And there is studies that have shown that the levels of anxiety are actually correlated with lowering your ability to think creatively. And we see this as your aperture when you are in a light and playful mood is very wide. You can see more connections, more things going on. But when you have a lot of anxiety, when you're in mental stress, your aperture gets very narrow and you get very micro focused and can't see a lot. So the plain English of this is that you're not going to do your best work, especially if you need to come up with a challenging solution to something that might be facing. You're not just going to do that when you're wrapped up in your head. So zooming out a little bit about how the brain works. The brain has 2 major systems, and we're happy to share there's a ton of research coming out on this and has come out and it continues to. I feel like we're just scratching the surface on this, on how the brain works. But we've got 2 major systems going on. Only 5% of that is a conscious, self-regulated system. So willpower, consciously processing things, and a vast majority, 95%, is actually driven by non-conscious automatic behaviors, that autopilot that Tom was talking about. And what we've noticed is there is a huge gap in just our education in how to train. Most of the programs and education that we've been exposed to our entire lives, there's a flood of information and resources and training. They're all driving into this logical skill set. And I think that is a totally important skill set, and you need that, and that is valid. But then what do you do with the other 95% that's actually driving the majority of your behavior? So that is what we have been unpacking and focusing on for well over 20 years, is to how do we actually help people identify and update the mental patterns that are driving that 95% of the behavior. So other words that you might think of this is like your intuition, your judgment, your gut feeling. How do you actually train that? And so that's what we've been unpacking. So for those of you who may not be familiar with NextJump, we have been around for 30 years. We run two businesses. We were recognized by Harvard as one of two organizations globally as a deliberately developmental organization. So in short, they did this huge study on adult development in the workplace and deemed us, alongside one other company, Bridgewater, as the best at doing this. And so as we got recognized this, and it was just how we ran our own company and grew our own employees, we had a lot more folks trying to ask, being like, hey, we want to be learning organizations. We also want to develop our employees. Can you help us become a DDO? And we were like, great, we're so into this. We're very into giving. That's how we actually learned a lot of our structures. We productized the things that work best. But we found this insight that it was hard to get sustained behavior change when we were running all of these programs. So if we were running at level 10, just dropping other companies and other organizations in at level 10 was very challenging. It was just too much for people to take on. And so over the years, we unpacked and got this insight that there's actually a degree of pre-work needed before you can drop in at a super high level, which is you need a baseline level of self-awareness in order to be coachable, which I don't think is something that's super obvious, that like in order to be coachable, you actually need to have a degree of self-awareness. But we'll give you the punchline up front, which is self-awareness of what? And so the self-awareness needs to be on these repeated thematic patterns. So we've noticed that if you're going to get what's the most bang for your buck in personal development, it's if you can focus on your automatics. But the part that makes this tricky is that this self-awareness is actually really hard to train alone. They're called blind spots for a reason. 95% of people think that they're self-aware, but only actually 10 to 15% of people are. And you got people walking around thinking that they've got all the answers to things, and they do not. They do not have a read on how it's going. So the idea here is that you need a mirror. So how can you create different mirrors for yourself? Some of the best mirrors are actually people that know you well, like a trusted peer, maybe an advisor, a mentor, a family member, something like that, that can call you out on your stuff or point out when things are a little funky. But a lot of people don't have access to that or feel comfortable for that in the workplace. Or maybe you don't have access to a mentor, especially when you're working from home, that, hey, let me just turn around and tap my coworker on the shoulder and run this by you type of thing is happening less and less. You have to, no one's going to actually like just call you up on the phone. It just feels very inconvenient. So we've noticed a huge need for this. So this is actually where AI can be a huge level one. I think the best thing you could do is take the advantages of an AI, mash it up with another human being. That's the best combination. But in the meantime, AI is a tremendous resource, particularly at pattern identification. So we'll walk you through a workshop today. We've developed an AI coach specifically for this usage that we'll test out right now. All right, so we are going to do just a quick workshop, 2 minutes. Grab your phone, grab your computer, pull up an email. We're going to draft an email. We're not going to send it yet, to aicoach@nextjump.com. The intent of this is to just observe yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. What is your current mental state or your mental chatter? So 0 being you're foaming at the mouth. You're so excited. You can't wait to try something at work. You're like, oh, I'm dying to find out if this works. And then level 10 being you're triggered, you're in complete panic, shutting down. You're just like, no, no go. Nothing's coming in or out of your brain. And 5 being neutral. So if the idea is we're drafting this email, you're going to share your score where you're at, 0 to 10. What's your mental chatter, mood, whatever you might want to call it. And then for 2 minutes, just brain dump why. Before you hit send, see if you can add another layer to what you have. See if you can add more specificity. See if you can add more context, what kind of emotions are playing out in your head. So maybe take another minute and see if you can add another layer. We use it like the idea of juicing a lemon. If you can get one more squeeze, it will help you to get a better response. And so we did get a question that said, will I get stuck on a spam list after sending? No, you will not. This is only receiving. It will only email you if it is received from you.
These are 3 dimensions that we've found produce best results from this system, but just even a real coach, the fact of being more specific with real events, about including details, and really your emotion and feelings on the topic. Like those 3 aspects make for better coaching.
Go ahead and hit send on that. What happened is we were just pinging our AI coach, and you'll get an email that looks similar like this in around a minute back. That is going to be personalized coaching based on our experience in the arena, coaching over 10,000 organizations, very focused on high expectations, like pushing you to sharpen your own critical thinking versus agreeableness, and then also some resources, video links to learn more from classes taught weekly by our co-CEOs who have a ton of experience in this. While it's processing and giving you a second to get your replies, want to take you through more why that exercise is important and how that can actually help you on the road to mental preparedness. So if you think 2/3 of the battle is around awareness, the idea is you want to slow it down. What is actually happening in your brain? Your brain is running at 1,000,000 miles an hour, running in the background, whether you want it to or not. But high performers train to harness what is going on and listen to what's going on in their brain as signal versus to ignore. So if you're thinking of creative work, I'm not talking like you need to come in and respond to a bunch of emails or just do data entry or something. Like I'm talking about for something where it's not clear what to do. Don't work and jump in and plow through if you are in zones 7 to 10. 7 is like a warning sign, like you're kind of like, hey, what's going on in here? Stop, do the mental scan. You need to be able to unpack it. The zone for creative work, you need to be in that good, light, playful mood, or you're just like we were talking before, it's not going to be good quality work coming from it. And so I liked this image because it's like a woman just like cleaning out the brain. You need to be able to unpack what's going on there at any given time. You might want to even think about it as brushing your teeth. When you wake up in the morning, you got to clean out all the stuff that happened overnight. And depending on what you got going on, you might need to do it multiple times a day. So this is a super simple tool to be able to just check in. Where's your baseline? What's happening right now?
And this is a practice that Laura and I have been doing for a long time now, where coming in every day, we do this mental scan. And in our case, we share with each other what's happening in our head. And occasionally we come into work and I am on the greener side, more raring to go. But very often I'm in yellow to red. And part of the key to getting out of that is simply exposing it and figuring out, because often I'm not even aware, why do I feel anxious? And simply talking about it, there's a whole body of research around simply being able to name something you're feeling lowers your anxiety and puts you more into that green zone.
Cassandra's mentioning that her email, she got her response already. It was kind of brutal, but also necessary. We found that a lot, it can be on the nose. The neat part about it coming from an AI is we've noticed it can be a little less upsetting hearing it from like a machine versus perhaps another person. And it's also a little bit easier to be more honest and unfiltered because you're just talking to a machine. Your mind is doing an always on automatic pattern recognition thing. So what happens is you're getting a new piece of information that's happening to you in the present. It is immediately making you think of something in the past. Oh, gee, this seems a lot like XYZ that I've already encountered. And then based on that, it's quickly making predictions. You're making a prediction about what is happening in the future. And all of this is happening super, super fast at lightning speed. You're not even conscious of it. And the funny thing is that most of these predictions that you're making are just inaccurate. What you think is going to happen. And I think all of us have an addiction and a tendency to making negative predictions. We think the worst case scenario is like the first thing that pops into our head and we're like, oh yeah, that. But if you actually slow down and take a look at what are you predicting, what actually happened, it's highly inaccurate. So one of the things that you can do is the idea of fact checking your own thoughts. We found this, I thought it described it really well, which is that your mind is going to create scenarios that reflect your insecurities, your fears, your worries. So it's always just fact check before just accepting them as truth, because especially in highly emotional situations, your brain is telling you stories that aren't necessarily true. I think maybe you've heard of things like you're an emotional hijacker or an internal terrorist that we have in our brains. The idea is, can you fact check your own thoughts? So you can fact check that with the AI, fact check it with another person. Can it just expose what you are thinking is a good habit to get into. An example on the flip side of something that I think is very relatable to all of us is the idea of, for example, say you do something well and you're like, oh, that was good. But then you unload on yourself with a whole bunch of self-criticism when you make a minor mistake, may or may not be warranted. That is an example of a bad habit. So if you think of both of these as just automatics, there is a good automatic that you can train, which is like, hey, can I get in the habit of like fact checking my mental chatter? Is this actually an accurate read of what's going on? Versus am I just overloading myself with negative predictions, negative self-talk? That is really hard. So the idea is that your brain is not necessarily always right, but I feel like you always hear a lot of trust your gut, trust your intuition. But the idea is, yes, that can be a huge tool if you are actively training your intuition. It is a skill that can be trained. Honestly, when I'm working on this, I find the hardest part is actually just being honest with myself about the stuff that's actually playing through my head. Because It's not very pretty. And some of it's petty, some of it sounds stupid. And I have this big tendency to want to logic out emotions. And that's just not how this works. That's something that I'm unpacking for myself is it doesn't have to make sense, but it doesn't make it any less real in your brain. So it's being able to not add that layer of self-judgment on top when you're doing this process is, I think, actually the hardest part.
Related to that, we have a whole separate class that we've run on how emotions impact decision making, and there has been like a massive change in how we understand that or over the past 10 years, where the reality is that whatever you call it, our feelings, intuitions, emotions are the vast majority driver of the decisions that we make, but we're not actually supposed to talk about them. And I think one of the benefits of the practice that you just did is that you start to expose even to yourself, what am I actually feeling? Because you're more likely to do what you're feeling than what you logically think is right. And there's so many examples of that.
It's one of the things as we're noticing coming back to that most training focuses on that 5%. I feel like we've been finding that a lot of the training and what's available for people is designed for how we wished our brain worked, which is, oh, great, take this class, check done, versus how it actually works is all around repetition. And when we talk about automatics and the concept of neuroplasticity, it has a compounding effect. Consistency is going to far outweigh intensity in this particular context. If you're trying to rewire your brain, you're not going to do it from reading a book or watching a video. You actually got to do this stuff over and over again to make new neural pathways. James Clear, you guys might know him. He's the Atomic Habits guy. Really cool stuff, but I love this. Very simple, 2 simple rules. You get better at what you practice, and everything is practice. So if you're thinking, what are you actually practicing right now? What are you repping? So it's either you're working on getting better, so you're enforcing mental habits that are helping you in situations, or you're actually getting better at getting worse. There is no such thing as just standing still in this type of work. You're actually just making your neural pathways better at a bad habit that's going on in your brain.
And maybe to make this real, for me personally, one thing I'm working on, many things I'm working on, but one thing is that I have a default and automatic reaction to stress where I tend to get analytical. Like when, stress or fear, anxiety shows up, let's stop everything. Let's get my cockpit ready. Let's analyze everything. Let's make a smart decision. I'm going to think my way out of the problem. And I used to beat myself up with that kind of that automatic because I wanted to be a faster decision maker, a more intuitive person. But what I've come to understand is that automatic served me well. Like earlier in my career in school, that ability to think and be able to articulate my thoughts in like this clear way, that got me good grades, it got me promoted, it got me certain jobs, like it served me. But in today's environment, as a more senior person in just a world that's going topsy-turvy and you have to make quick decisions more than ever, it's no longer serving me. So I have this automatic that in one way is really ingrained and benefited me, but now I need to become aware of that and do something different. So in that case, my something different is when I get stressed out, I try to say something, for example, to my colleague, Laura, I don't know what to do here. This is stressed out. Just literally start verbalizing it as quickly as I can. And second, take some action very quickly so I can get some more information. But that's an example of what we're talking about, where if I don't practice that, the red thing happens, where I'm stagnant. And that gets worse over time. I think one of the cool things about when you become more self-aware of these automatics, these micro behaviors, I do think they compound over time, that they don't have a huge impact on one particular day, but because you're doing those little behaviors 10 times a day, it does impact your month, your year, really your career in life.
So if I had to do a summary, so now that you have this tool, the ritual of the mental scan, before you do creative work, check in, where are you at? And then the idea is to slow it down and expose what's going on in your brain. Is that accurate? And then look for what shows up repeatedly. And you will get benefit if you address that thing that is showing up repeatedly for you. To relate this back to the idea of mental preparedness, I equate that to the awareness of what is going on in your brain. And if you can get awareness over time of what is tripping you up most commonly, then that's something that you can now train and get better at. And so we definitely categorize this as a practice. It is something that takes that constant gardening, because as living beings, we are always in motion in a world that is always in motion. So it's never going to be exactly the same, but you can get stronger in this skill of mental preparedness to better react and navigate situations, whether that might be recovering faster from something and getting you back in a positive headspace. And the goal of all of this, to be a little fun, is that you want to feel mentally lighter. And if you have more mentally lightness, you're going to have more breakthrough thinking. If you guys have seen the Lego movie. There's this moment towards the end where the character Emmett becomes a master builder and he can now see all the pieces and how they fit together. When you're light and playful, you start seeing options and choices that you didn't know you had. And it's more fun. Looks like people have gotten their responses back. Carmela, that's really cool. She's sharing that she's been using it for a while here, and she's saying it's kind of strange, but AI is helping her trust her intuition more. That's cool. So if people want to, feel free to unmute what your reactions are, what resonated with you, what didn't.
Deborah's asking to continue. Can you just keep emailing it? Yes. You can email it on demand, and then you're finding you can simply reply back to it and have a conversation like a person. The other thing that, personally I've found super useful is that it is, as Laura said, it is just a machine, and it is designed to have these high expectation, push you, to help you identify blind spots, things you may not be considering. And that can be sort of triggering if your boss said it to you or your colleague said it to you. But at the end of the day, it is just a machine. And so it can say things that are pretty spicy to me, and I'm like, that's a good point. Whereas if someone else said it, I'd be like, what you talking about, buddy?
True, so true. Yeah, this is a free resource, so feel free to continue using it. Feel free to share it with others. It's just simply an email. So it's at aicoach at nextjump.com. And we believe that everyone should have a good coach. And it's a wider mission for us as a company to democratize the tools behind elite human performance. What I really like about this type of work in the automatics is that I don't care what job you have, what industry it is, what level you're in, everybody makes decisions and everyone has thoughts and feelings. So if you can figure out how to navigate those better, then that's a really universal thing, which I think is cool. So what some common questions we get, people are asking, your data is private, it is encrypted. We can't even see what you write to the tool. So like we have no idea. We can just only see if people use it or not. So it is not for training purposes. It's not getting sucked into something that will show up on another website someday. That's not the intent behind it. If you are interested in this idea of automatics, Tom and I are running a series. We're calling it a diagnostic, which is you sign up for 2 emails a week from AI Coach. We'll walk you through some of the more popular and tested formats on how you can use the tool. It might just inspire you. As Tom was saying, you can email at any time with any situation, anything in it. It's like completely free form. But if you would like a little bit of structure, let us know. At the end of it, you will get a report on your analytics. We've been working on this, and this is examples of some of mine that it has come back for me on things that I need to work on. And so I think some of you were mentioning that you got a little spicy responses. This one was some spicy coaching for me, but I've been thinking about this and it's really changed a lot of my perspective. I tend to undercut insights and discount them before actually trying them. So I am now paying more attention to the little signals.
The end of the 4 weeks, so you'll have written 8 or more interactions with AI Coach. It'll give you an analysis of these automatics, that some of which you seem to be displaying that help you and some of which hurt you. So for me, I've definitely been working on trying to be faster, and especially on the technology side, build and iterate quicker. It had some insightful things to say about things I'm doing that are holding me back. For example, one pattern was when I feel overloaded, stressed out, I tend to do what I said before, which is I hunker down, try to solve the problem myself. I don't tell anyone about it, which is such a basic thing, such a basic behavior, but I do that all the time. I do it at home, I do it at work. And simply having this, it's a mirror that kind of shows you what are these tweaks that you can make that will help you improve in really all aspects of whatever you're trying to get done in life.
Also, this was a funny version of the mental scan that gave us a good laugh. It put us in a good mood. So we thought we'd share it with you guys too. So if you don't want to use just a scale of 1 to 10, you can use a scale of bread. Awesome. Questions, thoughts, reactions? Deborah's feeling like the barely functioning bagel.
I think you guys did great. I learned a lot. I don't know much about AI, honestly, but combining the use of AI with constructive feedback, I think is really an awesome idea. This is the first time I'm hearing about it. I really appreciate what you guys shared. And from stuff that I do know, I can tell that you guys really do know your stuff.
Thanks for sharing.
Keep using it.
I was on a webinar like a week or 2 ago, and the first time I used it, it gave me kind of a robotic answer around like, oh, don't focus on your kind of spiritual work, focus on your tactical, like look for the job. And I was able to challenge it and be like, nope, the spiritual work is actually, it sets the stage for everything else. Like it unblocks me. And it took my feedback into consideration, and then it recalibrated, and then it constantly
Nice.
refers back to my progress. So it's really cool to see it had an initial read, then it realized, oh, I'm not factoring everything in, and then it recalibrated. So I really appreciate that because other LLMs don't do that. So
Awesome.
thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's the team that's building it, it's putting a lot of care into it. But that idea of holding high expectations without being obtuse is a non-trivial challenge to hit. Because if you just went into an LLM and started asking it some advice, they are really programmed to, as my 15-year-old would say, glaze you. They're just like, that's a great idea. You're wonderful. Do more of that, which is not useful. We really want tools that push us.